Hello, and welcome to the Product Insiders LinkedIn Live series, in which we interview product leaders and learn how they leveraged customer insights to navigate tough product decisions. I'm your host, Zach Lyons, managing partner of Agile Innovation Advisors. And if you're joining us live today, can you please enter where you are from in the chat so we know who is with us? Today, our special guest is Pankaj Prasoon, Director of Product Management at Microsoft. And we'll be asking Pankaj some questions, but if you have any specific questions for him, please enter them in the chat and we'll get to them in a bit. So with that, let's begin. Pankaj, thank you so much for joining us today. My first question for you is, thinking about a tough product decision you've had to navigate, can you please tell us about your role at the time and the situation?
Oh, thanks a lot, Jack, for first of all inviting me to this forum and presenting my experiences. And as product leaders, I think navigating pivotal product decisions, especially in our world, is day to day. But I think I want to take one of them, which is when we were transitioning a company from a services model to a product-led growth strategy. Okay, it was as much exciting and challenging journey. Okay, and I was actually advising the CEO then as chief product officer. Okay, so think of me as a captain who was steering the ship through this uncharted territory and water, which is what product managers do.
Mhm.
And the situation was just about making product decision. It was actually fundamentally changing the way the company operates, views their customer, and grows in this field, right? So the startup which I was talking about was in this crucial juncture, okay, similar to many of us where we find in our careers, okay, whether you're a product leader or in sales and things like that. And they aim to democratize coaching, which is a very noble and impactful goal. And they want to shift from the services to a focused on product load get market, okay, which means to say that you're just not thinking about the product, but you're also changing the company's core philosophy. And
Mm.
in this situation, I've often leaned heavily on the wisdom of a great product manager who never was a product manager. He was a CEO, Steve Jobs. Okay. And he always said, you got to start with the customer experience and work backward towards technology and not the other way around. And that was my guiding principle. Okay. So we started deeply understanding our customer needs, the pain point within the leadership development, and how you want to democratize coaching could address this issue, right? So the focus wasn't just about creating a product or a tool, okay, but a solution which is
Mm.
so deeply integrated in our day lives that, which is intuitive, seamless, and so on and so forth, right? This required me, because I was not full time, I was just advising, right, to take bold product decisions, often choosing simplicity over complexity and always keeping user at the at the forefront, right? And I just want to quote one more thing which is very close to me as a product leader, Marty Kagan's point that at the end of the day, we as product managers job is to discover product that is valuable, usable, and feasible. And that was
Mm.
my goal, right? Saying, and hence we did a lot of exercise during that product at time. So, in short, right, as a product leader, it was just not about making tough decisions, but also about inspiring and leading a team through transformation. Okay, it was championing the user-centric approach, embracing agility, and always pivoting around what the market and the user wants to tell us. So, and that note, I want to say something to you, and it probably answers to your point that when LinkedIn's co-founder Reed said, if you aren't embarrassed by the first version of your product, you have launched too late. So I wasn't afraid. I wanted to just go and get as much dirty it can be. Just let's go and launch and let's see what the user reaction was, right? So in that process, we learned, we grew, and the process still continuing, right? It has not ended. So yeah, so that was the story
Interesting.
about the startup which I was helping on.
Okay. Well, like we definitely some stuff to dig in here, so I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, coaching is typically offered as a service, so really offering it as a software product is kind of a new approach, or at least novel in my world. So I'm really curious. So, what was the challenge or issue you were trying to overcome? Was there something specific, a decision you had to make, or something you had to learn about to actually get to where? Well, and we'll talk about where you got in a few minutes. But was there some challenge you had to overcome?
They were money, but so first fundamental was look at when the CEO contacted me, they were primarily, like you said, a services-based mindset to a
Mm,
product-led growth strategy. That was everybody talks about PLG, but very seldom people have experienced PLG, okay, product-led
okay.
growth. So that was the first thing. The second was we had to reorient the entire business model from a service-centric approach to a product-led, which means to say that you had to shift the way you were offering your businesses, your value proposition, your engagement with customers, and so on and so forth, right? It was just not about building an inspiring product, but it was also changing your go to market, your sales, your customer support, your technology footprint, and the DNA of the company. And one of the most difficult aspect I'll tell you of the decision was inherent risk involved in changing the proven services model to an untested product centric market in a geography, especially in Southeast Asia, where it's never tried before. It's a lot
Mm,
easier, like, with betterup.com, coaching.com, that, there is a market within the US and the North America region. But when you look at Southeast Asia, it's very, so you're trying to create sort of a net new market or net new audiences for yourself. So we were trying to move from a tailor made solution for each client to creating a standardized solution and a product, right, which appears to the
mm,
broader audiences. So not only it required a very deep understanding what the user needed at scale, okay, and the challenge was diversity and complexity in the field of professional coaching and leadership development. You go to anybody today, you go to Microsoft, it's a different philosophy. You go to Google, is a different philosophy and things like that, right? The another challenge which was around internal transformation which was required, right? You needed team members to have high touch personalized services. They have to adapt thinking in terms of scaling the product, right? So it required a significant amount of mindset. We had to embrace principles of agile, user centric design, data
mhm,
driven decision making, and whatnot, right? So the more challenging, I would say, was the uncertainty and resistance to change, right, both internally and from the existing customer base. They were
mm,
constantly concerned that, hey, look, in the services I get a personalized approach. When you just democratize it, you're going to make it very standardized, less customizable, and you are looking for scaling the product and so on and so forth, right? But again, I'll go back and remind all of you who is listening and who would eventually listen to this about Ben, who said making good decision requires making time to think. So the difficulty wasn't just operationally, it was strategically thinking that, how do I, as a product leader, navigate this transition, right? And look at a long term implication of this, not just in terms of product development, but also in terms of marketing, sales, customer support, and overall business strategy, right? So the decision required us to think on the very fundamental of a product manager, which is vision, right? Deep understanding of customer, courage to take the leap to the unknown, right? And we had to be comfortable with this discomfort of change and stay very focused to the larger goal of democratizing coaching and leadership development. So I can say the journey was very challenging, but it promised that to transform a landscape of a business and the value we could offer to this industry and the customer.
yeah, and I mean, as I hear you speak, it's a difficult challenge in that you're trying to build a traditionally non-scalable type business, coaching, to be scalable, but yet still not feel cookie cutter to
Yep.
the coachee, right? So that they feel like they're getting what they expect, customized advice. So that's actually an interesting, and I'm sure that obviously a lot of other industries have gone through that transformation. So the fact that you were thinking about it holistically is impressive. So I guess what did you do? Like what insights did you gather, or what was key in helping you sort of navigate this process?
So I go back to the 101, and and I follow a lot of product leaders, and Sachin Ricky, if you listen to his Wharton speech as well, I mean, there's a 101 he talks about very similar to that, right? Because it requires a shift in business model. The approach which I took was very methodical and customer centric. Like I said, you always have to start with the customer at the center. So we recognize that very early on, understanding and integrating what the customers was looking for was absolutely important for the success of the product, which eventually will give you the PLG growth the CEO was looking for. So what, to
Mhm.
your question, what did we do, right? And I will talk about 5 things which we did. Number one, customer research and feedback loops. I launched an extensive customer research, conducting interviews, surveys with coaches of different diversity, different background, different geographies,
Okay.
existing potential, and that gave me the enough insight about the needs, the challenges, and expectation of our target audiences in that space. Okay. Second, we looked
And
at iter-
was that for the coachees, or who were the folks that you were trying to gather insights from, or was there
so
multiple
both
audiences?
both coach and coaches, as well
Yeah.
as well
Okay.
as HR practitioners within the enterprises, which are the leaders, right, who are the sponsors for it, right? So speak to
Okay.
them as well. For example, you come from a consulting background, and if you have a senior consultant who aspires to become a partner, they have to go through a level of coaching. And probably one of the ways is that you hire an external coach to come and you start coaching them, right? So how about how do you do that for a business context and an enterprise context as well? So the audiences were just not the coach and the coaches, but also people, practitioners in the enterprise world, okay, the HR heads of the companies, and so on and so forth.
Oh, I see. So you have multiple audiences here: the coachee, the coaches, and the senior management executive people who were essentially working in the business, leading the business, the business
Yes,
leaders.
yes.
Okay.
Um, and again, great point, right? So we looked at iterative product development. Never, people have always spoken about it. The way I looked at was, we are not going to talk about MVP, which is minimum viable product. We are going to look at minimal marketable product. I need to build something which my market team can go and sell. My salespeople are able to sell, right? So we were looking at building this. So we were building iterative processes, testing feature, gathering feedback, and necessarily making adjustment. For example, in a set of 15 users, we were piloting features only for select users, and we were just seeing their reactions, okay,
Mm.
onto the screens and so on and so forth. Not every 15 was getting it, only few of them could see those new features and capability, right? And we were iterating based on their inputs and reactions. The other thing was, often you will see product development works in isolation, okay, but that's not the right
Mhm.
way. It needs to work towards marketing, sales, customer support, all has to come
Mm.
together. Because what is the point that I make a product and I spend millions and billions of dollars in marketing and sales to sell this, right? A product needs to sell by themselves, right? So and who can give us the more insight? It was salespeople on the ground, who was the marketing people, right? What is being marketed, what the market research is saying, right? So ensuring that all of them also become part of what we call as the epics and the scenarios and the features, and the objectives of the entire product design. Then it was around training and upskilling the internal people, because I said it was a cultural shift, right? Where you're talking about very product centric approach, and talking about different methodology. And fifth, last but not least, communicating. What happens is, when we go through all of this transformation building product, I will come to you, I will research you, and then I'm gone for 6 months, and then I come back and tell you something about it. That's not the way we looked at it. We
Mm.
kept on speaking to people whom we had interviewed and showcased them. And look, we heard you. This is what we think could add value, and take their inputs, right? So
Mm.
a lot was done around communication, strategy. So these are the five things. To your second part, what were the customer insights we got? First was, hey, look, there was a strong demand for personalization within standardization. So while the product looks at standardization, people were still looking at personalization. And that was one of the challenges. Then how do you build something which is more efficient and accessible in the product, but it's still giving that personalized experience for enterprises, for coaches, for coach, and things like that. Keeping user experience and simplicity at the core, okay? Because the way we wanted product was to be easily integrated in our day-to-day routines without steep learning curve. If I have to spend time in educating you on to use a product, which means there's something wrong with the product. It needs to be very
Mm.
intuitive. We
Right.
looked at outcome oriented approach. For example, what is the outcome my customer, in this is coach and coach, is looking for, rather than a feature? Okay, for example, why do you require coaching? Because you want to uplift certain skill sets and things like that. That's your outcome.
Yep.
The fee, it's not about creating an OKR, tracking into the system. That we're not talking at a feature level, but we're talking about an outcome level, right? So that a
Mm.
clear evidence could be given to them. For example, if I know there are 5 things I need to work upon, who's the right coach for me, right? Asking that right question and trying to create an matching for them, saying these are the potential people who have helped previously in the past, and look at that information and giving them, right? So look at the outcome rather than the feature with the product gives. And then continuous engagement, right? How do you continuously engage with your audiences, which is with hr practitioners, coaches, through learning and rather than a one time intervention saying, oh look, we have a larger announcement, we're launching a new product, new version, new beta 1.0, 2.0. No, it's about how do you constantly engage with them through the product. How do you gamify? For example, the like button which came in LinkedIn came through an experiment which was not rolled out to everybody but to select set of audiences and things like that, right? So how do you continuously learn from all of these and incorporate, right? So long story short, I mean, I spoke a lot. We realized that the successes were hinged not on just building the product but creating an experience that resonated with the personas we were involved in. It was around how do you keep a customer's focused approach coupled with obviously all the agile product development and whatnot, and the company's mission to democratize the coaching culture. And that was the key for us to navigate this entire phase in the business. Okay, I would say.
So I'm going back to something you said about the outcomes. These are the outcomes of the coachees, right? Would have. Was there? How did you figure out what those were? Did you guys have a way to kind of understand them, or is it so varied that the platform would just have to deal with each of them? Or was there a set of them that you were trying to understand?
So first thing first, it goes as if we as product leaders or interviewers have to act like a coach, and the coaching says that you don't lead the conversation, you let the other person open and speak about what they want to do, right? And you have to listen in,
Yep.
active listening, getting insights from them, right? So the very
Right.
first stage of the interviewing was about, let's understand what do they do, how does a day in a life look like, what are the potential things they're looking at, right? What are the capability or the outcome? For example, my goal is to become principal to partner. That's my outcome. Okay,
Okay.
now, what do I need to do? What are the skill sets? So, can I go back to our repository and see people who have gone from principal to partner? What are the skill sets industry is looking at? Right? Giving them the ammunition, saying, okay, fine. Here are the 5 top skills which is needed in the demand, right? From an HR perspective, these are the job skills. These are the skills you will require. These are the competency, and these are the maturity level within that skills also you will require, right? So sort of giving them that outcome, saying, okay, fine, if I have to move from principal to partner, this is how my journey is going to be. These are the things I need to work upon, and how am I going to work upon? So the necessarily the answer, Jack, we were looking for, what are we doing, why are we doing, and then get to how are we going to do, right? So that was it, right? So more speaking and trying to understand rather than leading it, because I'll tell you, it was a nightmare when I looked at all the 100 interviews to come and consolidate and see what are we talking about, because
Mm.
10 people have different outcomes. Somebody's looking at very, the demography was a lot different, personas was a lot different, but right. And that was the, I think, fun part where you as product leader sit down and see, oh, this is my vision, this is my strategy, right? Now, how do I design it so that it's scalable, right? And it caters to what they're looking for, right? So that was the fun part of it, I would say.
So yeah, you did hundreds. It sounds like a lot of interviews with customers, right? So you just kind of went through the insights you gathered, then try to marry up what they were saying as a challenge to what your vision was to say, okay, here's what we need to do in the product. Did you have any approach to doing that? Was it systematic in any way? I'm just kind of curious, or was it more what I would call bottom up, where you're looking at the insights you gathered and looking for nuggets in those insights? Like, I'm just kind of curious, if someone were listening saying, I want to go do that, what would you give them advice as far as how you did this, how you got these customer insights?
So I think I will recommend for them to go back and read your, listen to your couple of sessions which you did on jobs to be done. A phenomenal series, right? 5-part series. We
Well, thank you
actually,
for that.
yeah, we literally use that. And again, to that point, Jack, frameworks and guiding things are there for us for a reason. Okay, they'll help us to simplify, but I think the context is very important. To answer to your point, we use jobs to be done, right? I mean, just to figure out what
Okay.
needs to be done and how do you prioritize it. But also, given the fact that it was a startup, we were very agile, right? So there was a flexibility around it, saying, oh fine, can
Yep.
I just pilot this and just revert it back, right? It wasn't that I'm going in with a 10,000 odd people and they're going to see and react. No, the user base is very small, right? So the
Yep.
potential to fall back was also very easy, right? So I think that was the approach which we took. Okay, and again, I'll recommend people to go back rather than going to the search engines of the Googles and the Bing, rather look at your 5-part series to understand how it is done in the real life.
Oh, appreciate that. So it is interesting, but you used a not just agile development, but an agile approach where you use jobs to be done to gather insights. Sometimes then it sounds like you move forward with an idea that you could just implement,
Yep.
being flexible. So it wasn't so, which in hindsight is probably a better way to do it anyway. It's much more an agile approach versus getting all the insights and then trying to make all the decisions and then do all the development. It's you get insights, you develop, you test,
Yep.
you go back, get some more insights, develop, test. So it's a so what happened? What was the result of this? Very curious.
Again, what I would say what's happening, okay, because
Oh, happening. Okay, it's
it's a
happening.
journey, right? In the sense,
Yeah.
what has happened in the sense. So first of all, the decision to pivot to PLG was obviously underscored and underpinned by the strong customer insight which we got. Okay, so it wasn't a perception or saying, I am the CEO of the company and I'm looking at PLG. No. So we had data and insights to back that up also. Okay, and
Okay.
why we used agile development to transform the startup, right? And again, as I say, people that if the journey is always going to be smooth, which means you have missed the mark. It needs to have challenges, okay? And I think that's
Sure.
that's the that's where the product managers and I often say walking the uncharted territory, reading something in the book which is not written, right? That's the job of a product manager, right? So even though I have all the list of feature set, that doesn't mean that is going to go right. We still have to go and find what's not written in the textbook. So the outcomes, I will say, were very significant, positive, and impactful, both internally and in the market. For example, getting recognized as one of the innovative startups within the Southeast Asia, right? One of the recognition, and recognition comes obviously when you put off that kind of performance, right? And in this context, performance was because of the product and things like that. Number two, what we looked at was key results. I'm talking about now, right? There is an increased market research and scalable. So that today, if you want to launch it in the US and North America, it's been designed in such a manner that you don't have to go and redo all your market research and things like that, right? It's been designed to scale, right? So you can launch into multiple geographies and things like that. Significant improvement in NPS. I can't tell you the exact numbers, but I'll tell you it just doubled. The NPS numbers doubled, which is Net Promoter Score, which is where you look for customer feedback and things like that. Which means to say that user did realize that it was simple, intuitive. We were able to personalize. The engagement rates was very high. Significant customer satisfaction and retention, 100% net retention. Okay, which obviously resulted in better financial numbers for the company.
Sure.
Also looked at, when I said awarded the best startup, right? So which means there was a brand recognition as well, okay? In the sense, when you start your product start delivering the outcomes for your customer or the client, which means you're building that reputation in the market, okay? So obviously that was a huge game changer as well, where people are looking just at the services. No, now this is a company which has got product which is backing up their philosophy and their go to market and so on and so forth. And I think last but not least, what we enabled was a culture of data driven decision making, okay? Because when you do PLG, you are looking at the data of the user's behavior and preferences, okay, which is allowing you to make those informed decision to continuously reform your product and strategy, but not the vision, okay, because vision is once. So I think these were the I think major key results. And if I have to reflect back today, Jack, and I'm still speaking and things like that. Like I said, the journey is still going on, right? We haven't made it to the unicorns of the world, which is the aspirations, right? So the decision to pivot is always a defining moment for any organization, okay? And
Sure.
in this case, what it demonstrated was the power of customer centricity, agile development, jobs to be done, and willingness to embrace change, okay? And to me, the journey basically taught this valuable lesson around innovation. You have to be resilient. And again, 101 of product management, align your product strategy with market needs, not the other way around, okay?
Mm.
And the pivot was just not about strategic decision, but a holistic transformation, right? For example, it led to the growth, it's leading to the growth, right? It led to an enhanced value proposition. And obviously someday, you're obviously going to come back and say, I am actually living my dream or the vision which I'm looking at, like democratizing the leadership development and so on and so forth, right? So again, the journey reaffirmed me as a product manager or a product coach to them, saying the fundamental truth in product management is Success lies, okay, and I'm going to repeat it again. Success lies in the intersection of customer needs, technological capability, and visionary leadership. Okay, these are the three things where a product manager needs to be very grounded.
Hmm. I like that. I like how you summarize that. It's interesting. It sounds like the journey that continues has been successful, but I always wonder, in hindsight, looking back, is there something that you would have done differently? Knowing what you know now, what would you have changed, or maybe made a different decision or no decision?
Yeah, I
Is there
mean,
anything?
and that's where, in hindsight, we always look back and say, did we do all the check boxes? And the answer is absolutely
Yeah.
no, right? There's always a scope of improvement. And again, I don't want to be harsh upon the work which we did and the entire team did, but obviously, few learnings which I learned, and it's a good eye opener for me as well. For example, I said, uh, if you allow me to take an opportunity to take the decisions all over again, there are certain aspect which I will want to refine and change it. For example, deeper customer involvement, right? For example, while we engage in customer research, involve customers early on, right? What happened was only after getting 15, 20 results, I realized that I have to co-create a diverse set of users to accelerate my understanding of their needs and preferences. Okay, so the demographics was very, very important for us. Okay, which I realized after doing 15, 20 interviews. Not it was not from the hindsight. Okay,
Okay.
uh, I feel that because a product manager is the, I would say, they have the highest authority but have no reporting line, right? So I mean,
Mm.
in a sense, sort of, I mean, in a sense, right, you are running
Worst
the
job in
show,
the company. Yeah, worst job
right?
in the company. No
Right.
authority. But yeah.
Right. But so you have to lead with what? You have to lead with conviction, right? You have to lead with not with authority but consensus and things like that, right? So in that sense, why I'm saying that the transition into business model was inherently risky, okay? And I feel strongly that a more detailed assessment and a mitigation strategy should have been placed, okay? Because we did hit some bumpy rides, okay? We did burn few feathers with customers on the way, right? And that could
Mm.
have been balanced. The third, which I've always told, and it's one of my learning, that we have to balance technology and people, okay? Uh, for example, everybody today talks about AI. I mean, in a sense, morning to evening in 9 to 5, my job, at least I would speak AI as a word 30 to 50 times, okay? uh, and
Sure.
and everybody wants to infuse AI. Right? That's not the thing. I mean, you have to keep all of these very differently, and so on and so forth, right? So you don't tend to rely heavily on technology. You give equal emphasis to people as well, right? And what happens is when you're so ingrained in all of these, you tend to have an oversight where you say, oh, let's use AI and this magic to make this matching happen. But it's not about AI, it's about you're matching two people with similar thought process, with similar aspirations and
Mm.
outcomes, okay? Then I think one more thing, 1 plus 1 is 2, but 1 and 1 is 11, okay? So we should have looked at strategic partnership and collaboration with
Yeah.
other companies to accelerate this conversation, okay? And and build complementary businesses or industry experts would have helped, okay? And one more thing, right? Continuous market analysis. It's not about first interviewing, right? You have to keep on refining. To your point, jobs to be done, my friend. You have to keep on going, right? You have to keep on refining the market analysis and things like that. So,
Right.
in summary, if I have to say, while the pivot has been good, it could have been greater
Mm.
if certain refinement could have been, done to meet the strategy objective. So, if you have to ask me and summarize what are the key takeaways, Pankaj, I would say importance of being agile, customer focused, open to learning, and adapting and adopting to every stage of product development. Okay.
Mm.
That is the biggest learning I had. Okay. And again, every engagement I do, I learn something new. Okay. It's not that, I have a, what is a cookie cutter approach and I go and do it and it's been successful. No, I mean, I have as much as failures and as much as successes as well, right? But I think each one of them is equally enriching and giving that experience to me.
Yeah, sounds like you have a growth mindset, which is great. Always open to learning and growing. And I do like how you talked about there's always the latest, greatest technology. Today it's AI, tomorrow it's who knows. But it's not about the technology, it's about solving the customer needs. So being customer centric,
Yep.
understanding the need, and then thinking about what technology can do. So thank you so much, Pankaj. That was really interesting, actually, and fascinating story. I'm looking at the clock and I realize we've gone on for a bit. I do want to see if there's any questions from anyone who's listening live. I know there is sometimes a delay in getting this on LinkedIn. So if there's a question, you can enter it in the chat. Also, even if you don't have a question right now and you're listening to this later, you can enter that in the chat as well. It acts like a post on LinkedIn, so we can come back to it and answer it at a future date. So even if you don't have a question right at this moment, we can obviously we'll get that in the future. So I do want to thank you again. While we're waiting to see if any questions come in for your participation today. I'm hoping the audience learned at least one thing. I actually learned a lot more than one thing from this conversation. And so I do hope, let's see if any questions have come in. Okay. We do have a compliment. Thanks for sharing the stories. So one person says very insightful. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Nicola. So if I don't see any other questions, I guess we can wrap it up for now. And again, continue the conversation in the chat. It'll be on there on LinkedIn for as long as we want it to be. And for all of you, please stay tuned for our next Product Insiders event right here on LinkedIn. We'll be interviewing more guests, hearing their stories. I'm always fascinated by them. I think there's a ton to learn from each person's story. So until then, next time, I'm your host, Zach Lyons with Agile Innovation Advisors. So take care.
Thanks, Zach. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pankaj.